And the last speaker for today is Andrei Shilnikov with his talk, Leonid Shilnikov and Mathematical Theory of Dynamical Chaos.
Not only for today, for our conference last week.
Yes, for this conference.
Right. Okay, I'm going to make it full screen. All right. Okay, first of all, it's not my talk only. I'm just a presenter. Right. So again, and it's based upon the recent paper that we just submitted the other day. So it's Sergey Gonchenko, Lyosh Kozakov, Dim Turev, myself. So as I said, I'm just a presenter. And what I'll try to do today, I'll try to illustrate what the scientific heritage of my dad is, right, using some examples, right? And then I have to apologize immediately that, for example, I'm not going to talk about Hamiltonian tangencies or about Hamiltonian tori, so level, sorry, right? And it's not my business, right? It's not my call. So I'm pretty sure that Sergey Vadim should talk about Hamiltonian tangencies more. So this is just again, this is the very first paper in the special issue that was dedicated to Leonid Shilnikov's scientific heritage. And we would, I mean, on behalf of the editors or guest editors of this issue, we would like to thank everyone who contributed to the special volume. And we are absolutely sure that Leonid would have enjoyed your contribution as well. Okay, so thank you. So again, this is what you see here in front of you is another titanic work done mostly by, again, Sergey and Leonid Belakov. So it's a volume, it's a collection of some of the Leonid's papers that were published in Russian, right? So if you don't have this volume, I do suggest that grab it or beg Sergey, right, while they still exist, right, unless you're gonna enjoy the PDF only. And my suggestion also for all of us that let's try to get it published in English one day. And I need to think about the copyright, maybe they expired already, so we don't have to translate, we don't have to retype the papers, but just use the PDFs and request them from the publishers, okay, like American Math Society and so forth and so on. Okay, it's a titanic work, and it's a great looking book. Okay, so when I started preparing this talk, I went over some old records. I looked at the old books that I have, including my dad's PhD thesis and his Doctor of Science thesis, right? And his private correspondence with some folks, including Anosov. And I'm going to talk about this at the very end of this presentation. So I'm going to publicly, for the first time, announce some of the letters that they exchanged back then at the time. So you will see that they're just like, you know, loving birds, right? How they talk to each other. I don't have my dad's letters, of course, right? Because they went to Anosov, but I have Anosov letters to my dad. Okay, and when he turned 50, right here on in this picture, right, we had a party at my mom's place. I was surprised. And then the guys, they presented the collection of Leonid's publication by that time. So he was 50, like we talked about 84. And this is also the collection of the PhD thesis of his students, right? You can see them. This guy, I mean, surprise, myself, I realized that Vadim is playing piano. And then I realized it's not the piano, it's a terminal, right? I didn't see that. Alek Morozov, Valery Lukyanov, Serezha Gonchenko, Angel Leva, then Kolya Gavrilov, Valia Framovich. I wish I knew why he's in that pose. If Leva may comment on that, that would be great. Then Leonid Belakov, apparently these are his hand drawings. And Sasha Bavutin, I mean, again, Bavutin could, I mean, point. And then that at the age of 50, right, and he has already what's called the salt and paper hair. gray hair. Okay, so let's move on. All right, that's my starting point. So let me see how I can read okay, so I need to talk to Mom about how old he is on this picture, right? And maybe Lola knows, right? But I guess this is the either just freshly established Institute for Applied Mathematics, or maybe it's still Physical Technical Institute, right? And then my dad is here, right? And he's standing behind Andronov's wife, Evgeny Sanna. And I don't know what he's thinking, but maybe he's thinking something like that. Damn it, this relay stupid systems, right? Let me focus on pure mathematics. And let me try to generalize what Leontovich and her husband Andronov did. So let me create the theory of these Hammer-Klinic bifurcations, right? And that's what he did, right? At that time, he was, what, 25 years old, 26. So he defended his PhD at the age of, I was born in 62, right? So maybe it's 62. So he was 28 years old at that time. Okay. So yeah, that's what I guess we can only guess what he was thinking at that moment, right? But very likely, like, he hated this piecewise linear system. And he wanted to do something really that mathematically was worth. All right, that's okay. All right, so that's his picture back then, and that was the first result in. This is the original paper. It became later on the first chapter of his PhD thesis, right? And then he considered again the saddle node bifurcation, right? So that's a local picture, right? And then what if it has what's called this Hammer-Klinic appendix Hammer-Klinic orbit, right? And at that time, and then again, we talked about this with Dima and Gonya and Serezha when we brought that paper article, right, preface, what we should say, and we decided, again, it was debate, that Leonid himself set up his problem of generalization. And then he, again, at that time, the technique that was applicable to high-dimensional, multi-dimensional system didn't exist at that time. So he had to develop the new technique, new approaches, boundary value problems, and so forth and so on, because all previous proofs in a two-dimensional surfaces that relied heavily on the properties of dynamical systems in a plane on a two-dimensional surfaces. So that was first result, and that's a second result. Okay, then he considered the Hammer-Klinic bifurcation of the saddle in case when this so-called saddle value is negative, right? And he proved that using the Banach construction principles that this bifurcation would give rise to the single stable periodic orbit. Okay, so picture on the left, that's my dad, that's myself, right? And then my sister looks at me, not very friendly, really, right? But kind of like, what are you doing? Two important messages. Every time I come to the, used to be in Snowbird meetings on applied dynamical system, and when people talk about these bifurcations, right, then Hammer-Klinic saddle node, and they call them SNEAK, I'm sorry, right, some stupid names like Sniper, and nobody really acknowledges. I mean, these results became a folklore. So it basically means that nobody acknowledges the original author of these bifurcation phenomena, right? Especially for the systems in dimension 3 and higher. Okay, and people always argue, oh, that's a SNEAK. I mean, if it's SNEAK, I mean, SNEAK, it means saddle node invariant circle, right? You're not on S1, right? You're on a three-dimensional, high-dimensional space. Okay, so you have to reference properly the original work, right? You don't reference textbook like for undergrads, like Strogatz. Okay, then as the next step, and that was a part of his Doctor of Science thesis that he put together, but again, he never got a degree because of the, I mean, you know the story well. Okay, so the first chapter in a thesis was he considered what's called a Schilling of saddle or Schilling of saddle node. So these are original drawings, by the way. Let me just comment on that. I was surprised to find that, I mean, typically back at that time, none of his papers was illustrated, right? None of the papers contained any figures. So that was really, really for me surprised to find that he published these figures in these original papers, right? I didn't think about that because all other his publications, they didn't contain a single figure. And I do know that some people really complained, like Colin Sparrow told me that it was very difficult for him to follow Shilnikov's work on a saddle focus, on a saddle cell, because the papers didn't contain any illustrations, right? Any geometry, how it works. So this is from his hand drawings. So he considered this local bifurcation when you have saddle here and saddle, they have different topological types, 1, 2, and 2, 1, meaning that, okay, one has two-dimensional stable manifold, while the other one has two-dimensional unstable manifold, and then they merge. And the question was like, what's going to happen if there's a trajectory that connects this saddle? And the result was that depending on the number of connections, okay, so in case when it's a single connection, then the disappearance of the saddle node will end up in the emergence of the single saddle periodic orbit, right? But in case, so that's just another illustration, right? That's my sketch, and that's how Sergey illustrated his vision of this saddle bifurcation, also known as the Shilnikov saddle node. So you're going to get just a single periodic orbit, saddle periodic orbit after that. But in case when the connection there are more than one connection, like in this case, I'll try to picture how the two connections could occur in the system, right? So as you can see, the stable manifold, it kind of bends and crosses the unstable manifold at 2 points, and each point corresponds to a periodic orbit, saddle periodic orbit. Then as the saddle node disappears, there will be a hyperbolic subset that is topologically equivalent to the suspension of the Bernoulli subshift on 2 or n symbols depending on the number of connections. So if you have 3 connections, then it's going to be a 3-symbol Bernoulli shift law. Okay, so again, that's how we envision this saddle node bifurcation in case of 2 connections. All right, so it's a very interesting result. However, and there are not many known examples, right, in applications when the saddle node may occur. So this example on the left, Paul Glenadin and Colin Sparrow played with this example. So basically, their idea was that, okay, we pick up some kind of lotus-like system. So there's a saddle at the origin, and then we're going to add up another equation in Z. So we add the quadratic term to the Z equation because Z is invariant curve, right? And then we will get another stable. So we can manage that 2 equilibrium states will merge and disappear. And then you have this hemoclinic orbit. And then you're going to get basically a hyperbolic subset without the saddle, which is going to make it hyperbolic attractive. But again, it's a good try. The problem is that that trajectory that approach the z-axis, they're going to run away to negative infinity along the z-axis because there is no lower bound anymore. The second example, it was a paper published by, again, Lienert. And it's unclear to me whether this result is, I mean, again, this is a true illustration of the Maclean saddle bifurcation, right? But it's a nice try. It was published in PRL. At that time, PRL was very generous, right? They published my papers around that time and never published after. But again, I have reasonable doubts, even though Yuri Kuznetsov, that he thinks that this result is correct. Okay, so the second part of his Doctor of Science thesis was about hemoclinic bifurcation of the saddle in case when the saddle quantity is positive. So So you have two negative eigenvalues, one positive, and the sum of these two is positive. Again, this is another example of a Falk-Laure. So when people only refer to his original publication when they talk about the dimension 2 bifurcations, and we're going to talk about this. But okay, but in general case, and let me just say in a few seconds, right, what general I mean, but this Hammer-Kleinick bifurcation will result in the emergence of the single saddle periodic orbit, but there are some exceptions, and we're going to talk about exceptions. And one exception is that, for example, it's not really that case, but kind of borderline case when the saddle quantity, the saddle value is positive, right, or which saddle index is 1, what's called the resonant saddle. Okay, then the situation is more interesting. Case number two is what we call the zero saddle separatrix value, also known as the inclination switch case. Okay, so the idea is that this manifold is no longer transfers to the stable manifold, but tangent. Right, we're going to talk about this more. So basically, what happens is that at the bifurcation, as the result of this bifurcation, the saddle that has orientable kind of loop now switches to, or I don't want to say switches to non-orientable. So this is a Möbius band. So that's the second case, and the third case that we called when separatrix, instead of entering the saddle along the leading direction, right, it for some reasons it changes its mind and comes back to the saddle along the strongly stable direction. Okay, now in the West, this bifurcation is known as orbit flip. And the point is that in these two cases, right, then the dynamics, you should get, you may get more than a single saddle periodic orbit, but again, hyperbolic subset nearby. Okay, and that's kind of funny, right? This shouldn't be here. Okay, I'll get back to the slide. I misplaced it. So, and the point basically is the following, right? Then when you have the Hammer-Kleinick orbit, right, in the case of inclination switch or orbit flip, which they are equivalent in terms of the outcome, what happens is that you transition from orientable to non-orientable case. That's how it looks locally, but again, if you look at the larger portion of the cross section, then this hook, right, this wedge is going to move up like this, right? Because again, due to continuity, right, it will be continuous something like this. Okay, so you're going to get the hooks like that, and the idea is that depending on the eigenvalues of the saddle, then the size of that hook, right, can be shorter than the original interval, right, which can mean that result in the fact that you're going to have stable orbits nearby this case, right, because of this hook and because of the contraction. But again, if that saddle index is less than 1, then you're gonna get a chaotic subset just around one loop. So you don't need a saddle focus, right? It can be just a saddle itself, right? But then you transition through, either through inclination switch to orbit flip bifurcation, right? And you can get countably many saddle periodic orbits nearby. Okay, and the true value of this result is that today, Misha Malkin mentioned that, or this paper it's actually not a paper, it's just a short note. It's based upon the results that he presented at the meeting. Then if you have two Hammer-Kleinick orbits, right, and then you have these conditions, either inclination switch, right, in this particular case, or when sigma is 0, then he basically argued that the Lorentz attractor may emerge right from that point, which is dimension 2 point, which corresponds to the resonant saddle or saddle that has this inclination flip, inclination switch bifurcation right there. Okay, these examples, again, taken from my work. This is actually Simova did this picture, right, if I'm not mistaken, just showing that, as you can see, chaos emerges right from that little point over here. Okay, And so is true over here. But again, this situation is more complicated because the saddle index in the beginning is greater than 1/2, which means if you double it, right? If you look at the second part of this map, if you double it, then this exponent is greater than 1, which means you have stability plus, again, you have the zero derivative. But again, I don't want to go into details. And I always wanted to find the example of inclination switch on a primary Hammerklinic orbit, not on a double loop like in the Shimizu-Morioka. And this picture is taken from our recent paper on one particular model of a nonlinear laser, which is very, very cool stuff, really, right? And these are the bifurcation diagrams from that nonlinear optics model. But the point here is to show that everything starts at these points, which is inclination flip, and this is actually a transition from figure 8 to Hammerklinic butterfly, right? So it's kind of change of the leading direction, okay? And this is also inclination flip point. As you can see, all starts from here, right? And of course, right, he knew the theory at this point, but how this the global unfolding get together, nobody knows this, right? That was our attempt to answer this question. Right, and that's an old story how this codimension to Hammerklinic bifurcation shape the overall unfolding of the system. Okay. All right. So, okay, now we arrived at the result that is not a folklore anymore. Right? This is called Shilnikov saddle focus, and the case is that when you have when basically the pair of complex conjugate eigenvalues, right, is nearest to the imaginary axis, right? Or you have two pairs, then the existence of a single Hammerklinic orbit implies that there are countably many stellar periodic orbits nearby, some kind of like a cloud, right? And basically in the West, we would just say that you have a countably many Smale-Horseshoe, not just a single one, but countably many Smale-Horseshoe. And again, this is just a hand drawing of Leonid, right? Basically showing how he illustrated the fact that the presence of the Hammerklinic orbit implies countably many Smale-Horseshoes. Okay, and this is taken from Schoolopedia. Again, cross section, right? Then saddle focus or this stable manifold makes it what's called sometimes Hammerklinic snake, which is not definitely a good name. But bottom line is that depending on the eigenvalues, right? So when the contraction is stronger than expansion, then that spiral kind of made of soft metal, right? So it doesn't want to expand. And this is just made of stainless steel, like in the old clocks, right? So that it wants to expand. And as you can see, it shows that several Smale-Horseshoes, this green, blue, and red one, and so forth and so on. For folks who like one-dimensional maps, right? If you look from the side, right, then you're going to see something like this, right? And basically, this proves that the existence of the Hammerklinic orbit implies that the system has countably many periodic orbits nearby, but also due to these tangencies, right? If I shift this up and down, clearly I'm going to get the tangency, I'm going to get stable orbits. And that's the main reason, okay, and I go back to this slide that shouldn't be here, right? It basically the main reason why if you have a Shilnikov saddle focus, then regardless of the system, at least in 3D, you're going to have these stability windows nearby everywhere, right? And they're uncontrollable. So basically, whenever you see the solid color, that means something is stable here, a stable periodic orbit. Okay, and not only are you going to have a countably many periodic orbits, but also nearby you will see countably many Hammerklinic orbits, secondary Hammerklinic orbits. And this is the reason I have this slide, not because I want to, is that when, I guess that was the second time when Leonid traveled abroad, then nice folks at University of Libre, ULB, in Free University of Brussels, right? They managed to organize a workshop honoring Leonid's contribution to the dynamical system, as it was called. And many people came to Brussels to present, and mostly applications. And I remember my dad, and then Dima knows this well, right? And he was kind of wondering why nobody extended his theory, right? It looks like it was just a complete story. And there were just a few attempts to extend the theory, for example, to understand how the bifurcational foldings looks like, right, in this particular case, right? And then this is just a now numerical answer to this question, okay? So, but bottom line, the meaning of Shelnikov saddle focus is that nearby, okay, you have a hyperbolic subset, but it doesn't have to be an attractor, but you have to make it an attractor. And these are just examples taken from Lawrence 84. Again, this is what's called Shelnikov meets Hopf, Andronov-Hopf bifurcation, right? Or another example of heteroclinic connection of two saddle foci, right? This is taken from the this is from the Ressler model, and this is from, again, Lawrence. As you can see, again, in the Lawrence case, these are Shelnikov saddle focus involved. And as soon as you've got that, and given that Lawrence model is three-dimensional with constant negative divergence, it means if you have this configuration, you have stable orbits nearby, and we're going to talk about this too, right? And that's what I meant by illustrating by saying that if you have a primary loop nearby, you have double loop, triple loops, right? If system is symmetric, you have multiple configurations, and they all come in pairs. That's why the bifurcation curves has a U shape. Okay, so now we're gonna move forward. Okay, so 10 years later, when Dad turned 60, again, his students presented him another collection of his papers by that time. So it was welcome addition. And at that time, he already published results on the Lorentz attractor over here, right? And then his mind basically focused on global pictures relating to how dynamical chaos emerges through what sequence of bifurcation, and whether we can find a simple bifurcation that would immediately imply chaos in the system, right? And then he started thinking of, like, again, why spiral chaos is so frequently observed in diverse applications. Dima mentioned this today, right? And then we're going to talk about the torus bifurcation, Lorentz attractor, blue sky, and I'm not going to talk about wildcats, I'll just illustrate. So let's talk about what the global scenarios, right? Dima mentioned already today that, so originally you have a stable equilibrium state that has spiral, this is spiral, right? And then it loses stability through the supercritical Andronov-Hopf bifurcation. So what you can see here, this unstable manifold kind of winds onto the periodic orbit right here, and that periodic orbit either undergoes period doubling bifurcation or it loses stability through the torus bifurcation. That's why we're going to talk about torus, and then torus breaks down. And again, I wanted to ask Dima what he thinks, why it's torus versus period doubling, and I guess he kind of knows the answer. Depends on the frequency of the saddle focus, right? If it's high, then you're going to get period doubling. When it's low, very likely you're going to get torus instead. And this is, again, this picture's taken from Lawrence 84. I mean, at that time, it's kind of interesting how I echoed my dad's phenomenological constructions, right? So it's my first try with that model. And basically, I wanted to illustrate that you have this scenario, and then as the kind of the convergence to either whatever is going on up here weakens, right? Then unstable manifold becomes tangent to this incoming direction, right? And then you're going to have Hamiltonian orbit, right? Even though you still have the original periodic orbit, which is already unstable, right? And then this will result in chaotic dynamics, like in the Lawrence 84. But interesting enough that in Lawrence 84 model, this is actually chaotic repeller. So what you see here is a chaotic attractor in the backward time, right? And the same configuration was found. I know that Shura is here in his hair cell model, right? So you can see the saddle focus, right? And then it loses stability, and then the whirlpool forms, right? And soon you're going to get this chaotic spike in activity, right? And it's another example of what we call Fitzhugh-Nagur-Marinzel model, right? As you can see, it's the same story, right? On the fault, you have a torus bifurcation. So I guess we're going to talk about tori next. Okay, so as I said, I will try to, I'll talk about blue sky catastrophe, right? And then I'm going to leave this apart, right? Maybe Dima one day will review this in details. Okay, so speaking of torus, right? The historically, the story begins with the van der Pol, Balthasar van der Pol result on periodically forced van der Pol equation or generator, right? And then and we try to answer the question is what's going to happen, right? How, I mean, it's a synchronization issue, right? When the frequencies get locked, phase locked or frequency locked, right? And then they showed using some truncated van der Pol equation that eventually the problem reduces to the following case, right? You have again, say Andronov-Hopf bifurcation, right? So this focus becomes unstable, and then you have a stable limit cycle. And then on a limit cycle, you have a saddle node. That's what's called a SNIC nowadays, right? You have a saddle node on an invariant circle, and then that saddle node splits into a saddle and into saddle and to stable equilibrium state. And this would mean that you have a resonant torus, right, that has a stable periodic orbit on it. So, and this would occur within this synchronization zone. Okay, I mean, again, I know it's a cliche, but known as Arnold tongue. Okay, and then what Andronov and Witt again, and I just picked the sentence from one of the papers. I was looking for the original paper, and I found this. It was after some time, Witt and Hyken experimentally confirmed the mathematical theory, right? I know that some of you just, I mean, smiling because it's a kind of a joke when Vadim Onishchenko came to learn.
Hey, it's not smiling because they have averaged system, but
no, I didn't mean that. I mean, again, experimentally confirmed. When Vadim Onishchenko came to my dad and said that we experimentally confirmed your theory, right? That again, the theory, it doesn't need to be confirmed, right? Experimentally, because it's already a theoretical result, right? So you don't confirm it. You can illustrate that, but not confirm. That's why when I put emphasis upon this confirmed.
Effect.
They confirmed conclusions, not the theory.
But I mean, you know
so
what I mean.
His written conclusions are confirmed.
Yeah, but you know what I mean by that, right? You don't say we verified your mathematical theory, right? You just say that we illustrated it.
No.
Okay, it's your point, right? Lova, it's your point, right?
Yeah.
Keep it to yourself. So what maybe Arkasha knows this better than me, right? If I'm not mistaken, again, this news shouldn't be here. Okay, they considered everything up to this level. If I'm not mistaken, it was something like A or square root of A over, no, it's A over square root of 27, if I'm not mistaken, that level. Arkady, do you remember that?
Not really numbers.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think it was from I remember this my students' time, that number. Somehow it just popped up in my memory. And I went through the bifurcation, the oscillation theory book yesterday, but again, it's 800 pages. And again, Lova, speaking of you and Grisha, you didn't even mention that book when you presented your vision of Andronov mathematical heritage, right?
So they didn't include the theory in their book.
Yeah, maybe they didn't. They didn't.
They didn't.
I was surprised.
Yeah, but they didn't.
Yeah, I was surprised. And needless to say that when again they submitted the book, at that time they were 35 years old, maybe, right, including Hyken as well. All right, so yeah, that's the book I was trying to find, not in the book, the paper, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So, and then Aframovich and Shilnikov, they wanted basically to see what happens above that threshold. Okay, whether the resonance zones can cross, right, and what happens, okay, within the zones, right, and basically what they showed is that once you're in the zone, right, there are options, right? Okay, that's called annulus principles, depending on certain conditions, right? Everything is nice, or the torus can break down and can lead to the onset of hyperbolic subset, depending again on the number of symbols, right? So that's the theory. But if I go into illustration, right? So you have so by construction, life on the torus is very special. If you have a stable periodic orbit on torus, you have unstable too. That's what I was trying to illustrate here, that stable, unstable, they come always in pairs. So this is kind of 1 to 3 resonance. And what happens later on, okay, then the torus, if we move higher, then the torus becomes called non-smooth, right? So it doesn't look like a smooth invariant circle anymore. And then this is due to that kind of homoclinic wiggles that start emerging, right, at the saddle, again, on the boundary. This corresponds to this case. So it's a saddle node on the boundary, right? And you can see this incoming separatrix enters kind of wiggling. And as soon as it's going to touch the unstable or strongly stable manifold, or it touches the incoming separatrix, incoming manifold of the saddle node, right, torus breaks down, and voila, you have onset of chaos nearby. And again, that's the theory of the torus breakdown. Again, it's a theory, phenomenological theory, right? And what you see here is Shura's illustration how the torus breaks down. Bifurcation occurs in a one Hodgkin-Huxley type of model. So what you can see here, this is just it's a saddle periodic orbit or stable fixed point, right, below this line. And then it loses stability, right? And then you have invariant torus over here that's smooth. And you can basically tell what the Flaquet multipliers here, right? The frequency of Flaquet multipliers, what the angle is. And then later on, Shura was able to show that it becomes non-smooth like this, right? And then it breaks down, okay? And then torus becomes, and then you enter, let me think. Here you're outside of the resonance zone, and then when you enter the zone, then you're gonna have, I don't know, 6 stable points, which means it's an orbit of period 6. And then in between there are saddle orbits in between them, right? And then Flaquet multipliers of these guys that used to be real becomes complex conjugate because they want to move through to the left-hand side in a complex plane. So they have to become complex conjugate. And after that, oops, okay, these guys will undergo a period doubling cascade. Okay, so somewhere here. Okay, so you can see that's the theory. And the super interesting fact that it's so great that these applications, they just follow these steps, right? Just one by one. Amazing, right? Regardless of the applications that you consider, right? It's just I picked mine, so I don't have to copyright anyone. Okay, so then we're going to talk about the Lorentz attractors. So that Leonid, at that time, again, Vadim was a numerical guy. He did the computations. Vale, right, was an analytical guy, right? And so these are 3 publications. Again, we're going to talk about in a second about, at the very end, I'm going to mention Alexeyev, right? But at that time, if somebody wants, want to submit your paper to what's called Doklad of Soviet Academy of Sciences, right? You have to see either one of the Soviet academicians, right, or his left or right-hand side, and kindly request that they would submit this paper on your behalf, right? That's how it worked in the past. So in these guys, in this case, Gaponov Grechov, he was an academician, and he had a certain quote on the number of submissions, right? So again, it's not like nowadays you pick your journal, right, and upload the files and then just wait for the reviews. At that time, the procedure was much more sophisticated, right? I guess you hear the irony in a sophistication comment. But bottom line is that, okay, so he commissioned Bykov and Vale, and they published these 2 papers And this was a short one, like PNAS. This should be only 4 pages long. This is the extended version. Also, we mentioned in our review that it took almost 5 years for this paper to come out. 5 years, okay, even though they submitted earlier. Okay, but the bottom line is that what they proposed, that what Tali just mentioned, is called geometric model, and that geometric model was so easy to follow and easy to verify against numerically this time. Not only how the Lorentz attractor emerges, right, in any system, what we call nowadays a Lorentz-like type, that diverse collection of such systems, right? So basically, this is the idea of geometric model, and meaning that due to the symmetry, these cross sections, right, are mapped into these triangles, and along that direction you have expansion, contraction, and that one. And this condition must be fulfilled. Initially, they have 4 conditions, but basically the fourth condition just comes from the quadratic equation. And then Leonid, and yeah, I should say Leonid, right? He proposed to how the Lorentz attractor may bifurcate, right, and kind of merge and become not Lorentz attractor, meaning that at this point it contains no stable orbit, so mathematically it's a pure chaotic attractor, and then it starts getting periodic orbits nearby, and due to what transitions, right, and the first transition, this one, right, basically means that you no longer have the strong expansion. So at the very end, you have these hooks, and hooks lead to homoclinic tangences. Homoclinic tangents lead to saddle node bifurcation, and then you got stable orbits nearby, and we're going to talk about in a second. Or option number 2, that is kind of less known, is that right in the middle here, you lose what's called strong contraction property. So that means there will be a hole inside, and that hole contains, first of all, a saddle periodic orbit. Okay, nothing wrong with saddle periodic orbit, but that saddle periodic orbit, due to the symmetry, right, it will undergo pitchfork bifurcation and will become a stable figure 8 periodic orbit, and that basically means that Lorentz attractor is about to die, right, and everything is going to go to the stable orbit nearby. Okay, and the interesting fact that maybe because I know this story, right, that was found in one particular model called Shimizu-Morioka, but then the nonlinear optics model that I mentioned today, it has the same fact. It has what's called lacuna, and that lacuna contains stable orbit, and that stable orbit eventually becomes dominant over the dynamics of the system. Okay, so so they again, you got to understand, I mean, for younger researchers, right, Leonid was not very friendly with computers or LaTeX, right? So basically, he envisioned all these bifurcations, right, in his mind, right? He didn't run simulations, right, and he didn't have to run simulations. And it was nice to have simulations to illustrate the theory, but the theory was in his theoretical constructions. And I was always surprised by that, right? How he could foresee the development of complex dynamics in system. And again, this is just the steps, okay? Homoclinic butterfly, then you have the saddle orbits, right? That's my illustration. These saddle orbits, they have stable manifolds like cylinders, right? And when separatrices enter this inside, then you have no attractor, and then after that you have again, when they no longer gets inside, then you have an attractor, and and then you have T points, right? And what is shown here is again, Vadim computed this bifurcation curve that Tali mentioned, right? And the point is that, okay, the Lorentz attractor in a Lorentz system, right, occupies just a tiny little region, just like over here, just little one. And that's why I asked Taka to verify at this point, for example, outside of this point or over here around that point K, whether his numerics can detect the presence of homoclinic tangences, right? And these homoclinic tangences soon will result in these solid color regions, which means these are stable orbits nearby, right? Okay, and basically, again, as I said, Lorentz attractor occupies this little region in the parameter space, right? And these are, again, these T points. And when I say T points, I mean Vadim Bykov, right? And the story of the T point is that as soon as you have a T point, its unfolding includes homoclinic saddle focus bifurcation curves. And in a 3D system, this means you have homoclinic tangencies and you have stable orbits nearby. So basically, and what I'm trying to say is that in this region over here, Lorentz attractor is truly a chaotic attractor, and then it's no longer true under that line, and that line corresponds to the tangencies, formation tangencies of hooks in a Shimizu-Muraoka model. And after that, the attractor becomes what's called, Leonid proposed a new notion of a quasi-attractor. So quasi-attractor is, again, it's a chaotic attractor that has hyperbolic subset plus, in addition, it may include stable periodic orbits, but you never know for sure whether at this parameter value you have them or not, okay? And that's what basically this picture demonstrates. So you have a Lorentz attractor here, quasi-attractor here, and then what we call Shilnikov flames. These are, again, inclination flip bifurcations. So as you can see, these zones, right, they emerge right at these codimension 2 points, okay? And these codimension 2 points corresponds to these hooks or inclination flip bifurcations on a longer homoclinic orbits, right? Okay, so I just listed a few of them. When you see it, I mean, again, in the theory, this zone should bend like that and enter from above. Okay, so everything works just like it should be in the theory. Okay, and again, this is inclination switch. I already mentioned that. Again, that was my illustration. I'm going to skip this. So in the, I'll just focus on this what's called TAND map. This for the z variable. So numerically, it's going to once you have these hooks, right? That map is going to get this this tangency over here when derivative is 0, and that basically can lead to the emergence of the stable orbits in a system. Okay, and this one more time. This was my final attempt to illustrate the inclination switch in case when the saddle index is greater than 1. Why you have these Shilnikov flames, right? Why you have stable orbits nearby? You don't have them. That's kind of funny, right? I should say, I want to say that you don't have them here, but you do. And the point is that even though your saddle has a positive saddle value, nevertheless, right, because of that inclination switch, the global map becomes a contraction, basically, right? Again, the length of this interval is shorter than the pre-image, right? Which means it becomes a contraction, and then this will end up with the appearance of the stable orbits nearby. Okay, so that's what I didn't want to discuss, right? But basically, back then we included this in our textbook. Dima Leonid, of course, led this conversation. Right, he wanted to come up with the example when you have saddle focus, right? But you don't have stable orbits, and that's what Dima was talking about today, mostly, right? How you use these different contraction principles, right? So your global divergence is negative, right? But local divergences, subdivergences can be positive to make sure that if you have this homoclinic tangencies, right, instead of resulting in a saddle node bifurcation, they would produce saddles, okay, which means that extra dimension is going to be unstable, right? That was the idea, basically. Okay, and even though this picture is sexier than that one, in Kazakov, Turaev, and Gonchenko, they basically demonstrated that this four-dimensional system that has a saddle focus here, right? It has no stable orbits. Okay, all right. So now, how time-wise? How am I? What about time? Do I still have time? Okay, so let me just illustrate two more stories. One is called The Blue Sky. I know that Vladik is in the room, so but this time it's not going to be a blue sky on the torus, but even though it's kind of close. So this configuration that was proposed by Dima and Leonid. So a saddle node in 3D, and then some unstable manifold comes back to the saddle node from the node region, right? And with every revolution, the diameter of this pipe gets thinner and thinner, right? It contracts narrower, and then as the saddle node disappears, right, due to contraction near the saddle node, this bifurcation will result in a stable periodic orbit. And then Kolya Gavrilov basically designed this example, right, and of this bifurcation. And then later on, we basically proposed this bifurcation in a slow fast system because it's just easy to use geometrical approach, right, to visualize how you can do it. So basically, you need to create this kind of tangency, right? And the tangency will give you the saddle node bifurcation of periodic orbits, right? And because of this slow, fast, this hysteresis, right, you re-inject it back into this region, right? And the story goes in cycles over and over. And if this contraction is strong enough, right, this branch of the stable orbits, then this will result in a stable periodic orbits. And lucky me, right, I knew that story, right? And then I didn't design actually, I have to correct myself. This occurs kind of naturally, right, in one of the Hodgkin-Huxley models, as you can see, just this GIF file. This is saddle node stagnation, right? Two trajectories, I mean, they're independent, showing that you slow down and then come back. And then this interesting result by Valery Lukyanov and Leonid, it's the same case, but this elephant has a unstable manifold that comes along the ears, right, along this strongly stable manifold. And basically, this is just a illustration of what you can see in a cross section. So you're going to get these homoclinic wiggles, right? And the idea is that as soon as saddle node disappears, you have a hyperbolic subset here, right? And the interesting part is that if you don't really care about fine details, but nevertheless, this bifurcation, again, you can place the saddle node right where you come back on a two-dimensional stable manifold, right? And then you have a stable orbit, this one, right? And then there's a saddle here in between. And when you come back to the saddle, right, you don't know how many times you're going to follow the blue orbit, this blue burst, right? Or eventually you're going to end up on a tractor. But if you split them away, right, then they would give you bistability, right? This GIF file is supposed to illustrate you have a stable attractor on the left, and then you have another stable attractor on the right in one of the Hodgkin-Huxley type of systems. So again, it basically shows that the theory that Leonid and his students developed and proposed, right, is highly practical, right? So I come to the almost conclusion. Just I show you some interesting historical photographs. Okay, this is Leon Chouard when we visited his lab and started working on a paper, right? Dima looks like that he doesn't like snow crabs. And then Chouard managed to invite Leonid to Hawaii. At that time, this is Sharkovsky on the left. Do you know who's the guy on the right? René Lazy is on the right. And that was taken in Hawaii. This is in Atlanta. And we went to see this exhibition, right? And I photoshopped this, right, just to say the Titan. Okay, and that's a family vacation in La Jolla in California in 72, I guess, right? Then this picture was taken in Leonid Bunimovich house. And as you can see, I mean, again, Leonid passed away, Zhora Zaslavsky passed away, Vale passed away. Yeah, it's a very sad picture, right? And then Grisha, I know he used these photographs to show when Leonid turned 75 at that time, we had a party at his place, right? And then Serezha is here, right? Happy camper. And then Grisha, you can see yourself, right? So I don't know who said about, I'm not going to comment on that. And this is one of the last pictures of Leonid when this Trinity came to visit him. And I truly appreciate that moment. All right, again, also taken in Leonid Bunimovich place, right? Jan Umansky here, Vladimir Nikolaevich, hello. right? And it's so weird that when I look at these photographs, right? I mean, I now I can see that he was already sick, and we didn't even notice that. And I do know that when they came back, my parents came back to Nizhny Novgorod, Grisha Osipov emailed me saying that just saw Leonid Pavlovich, he looks great, what America did to him, right? That's so naive, right? So blind. And this was taken, I guess, in Kiev, right? In our friendly Kiev, when Leonid was awarded this Lavrentiev Award, this picture of Sharkovsky. This is the time when Отдел номер один, right, was a disaster, right? And it was still friendly environment, right? But again, as you can see, ruins. And then my dad turned 70 at this point, right? Leonid Belikov is here, and as we celebrated in a conference room. And that was in Switzerland. Grisha is here. I'm glad I mentioned Yuri Maestrenko, then Marty Hausler, right? Then Paul Glendening over here. Also, we just had a great time in Switzerland. Then Yuri Kuznetsov, it was my first sabbatical, right? And Dima managed to organize a nomination, Humboldt nomination for Leonid, right? And that was his second time when he got this extension. Clicking here, I guess this is Trishov, right? If I'm not mistaken. It was taken in 2004. I have no idea where it's taken. This is interesting. It's just freaking amazing, right? It's called Small World. Okay, Leonid here, there's me, young, Yuri Maestrenko, Jesus Christ. Dima, help me. Christian Mira, okay, Ott, Rolf Abraham here, Laura Gardini. This was a conference organized by Yanis Kivrakidis, right? Non-invertible maps. I guess I was just invited as an interpreter for Leonid only, right? Volodya Maestrenko, who else? Marty Golubitsky is here. I'm looking at the familiar faces. And then I have a meeting yesterday, right? It's we discussed, we just got a grant for educational grant for mathematics in biological sciences, right? And then I saw this guy and I couldn't believe it because I just took a picture of this photograph to present it today. His name is Dig Mac, I forgot his name, right? And he was at the meeting yesterday and I couldn't believe that. And I said, is it you? And I shared this picture with him and I said, I'm going to talk about this picture today. Okay, so that was, I don't even remember, it was like 95, 96, right? And who else is in this? No, may know in this figure. All right, yeah, that was, again, my mom. And we are in Cologne. Martin Haslin again, Dmitriev, Alexander Sergeyevich over there, Vadim Semyonovich, and his wife, they passed away last year. Very, very sad too, right? And then apparently they had some drinks already. I can see the look of my dad. And then again, when he got this Humboldt Award, he was visiting the Weierstrasse Institute. Dima was there at that time, and then that group was led by Dima, I don't remember. Not Karl.
Klaus Schneider.
Klaus Knaus. Yeah, thank you, Bernard. Is it you, right? Okay, Klaus, of course, right?
Klaus. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Leva. Right, and Vadim Andrei was his. Vladimirov. Oh, I know this, Leva. Speaking of Leva is here, as you can see, right? Alec and Misha, just having fun. Okay, this is interesting. This is taken in 2002. I didn't have a passport at that time to travel back to Russia, right? So I didn't see my parents for several years, and then I went to Brussels, and this is Solvay meeting. Solvay, this is Baron Solvay, and as you can see, this is Ludwig Fadeev, this guy. Anosov, Dima, Anosov, right? And this is my dad. And the reason it's a second picture, right? because I'm going to talk about this private correspondence between these two distinguished gentlemen in a second. Okay, so that's how they wrote together. Okay, so guys, the purpose of this is just to show how the information was spread at that time and how they submitted the paper. I mean, I do know that Russian-speaking people in the audience, right? You see, it says, "Dear Leonia, Pendragon either went to France or he's going to go to France for a month, so I can't contact him." I mean, Alnosov was the right hand of Pendragon. So basically, they try to they try to manage Leonid's paper to get submitted to the what's in English called PNAS here, Proceeding of National Academy of Sciences, or Doklady of Russian Soviet Academy of Sciences. Okay, and it says Kolmogorov, right? Let's try through. Kolmogorov is not here either, so which means we can't even submit, I mean, start the submission, right? Because we have to wait, right, 2 weeks before they come back. Or you can write, because I guess Alexeyev, he was the right hand of Kolmogorov, maybe I'm wrong, but you see it says, maybe you should write what's called bag, I mean, again, letter to Alexeyev if it's needed. And again, dear Leonia, Palace in New House, send me the preprints bifurcation of dynamical systems, dynamical Morse-Mel systems, right? I didn't read it, but I suspect that it's very close to your interest, and that's why, okay, my question is, should I just want to say email, should I mail these preprints to you so you can read and tell me whether it's interesting or not, right? Because I'm not a specialist, right? And okay, and in case you can always inquire with Pelis, and that's his address, that I see it on a post mail. Okay, and another story, right? How you, yeah, Leonia, I didn't get any packages, any post from you, right? Or from you addressed to Pendragon. Again, that's how they submitted the papers. So either you have to, I mean, at that time they had to either mail the submission, right, in using the post, right, or just travel on a train to Moscow and submit in person, right? So no electronic submission whatsoever. And okay, then they talk about Smail. You're welcome to read it right now. It's in English, I guess. That Smail just submitted his preprint, right? And I guess I would like to share it with you. Sinai just let me know that that he tried to push his paper forward, right? But again, it took almost a year or 9 months for a single paper, right? So, but again, because of the quotes that every academician had, academician had a line, a queue of people begging or waiting, or just waiting when the submission can be even considered before the publication. And it took almost a year, sometimes 2 years, and I said 5 years to have a paper submitted, right? And then Slava, it's about you. If you're here, I wasn't able to, I mean, again, to cheer you up.
I listened to you very carefully. Thank you.
I'm glad, I mean, because I didn't come to your celebration, right? And given the moment, right, I would like to
Thank you.
heartily thank Slava. I mean, again, many returns, right? Good health. And the conversation is about you. Katalog, likely following Green's said that dissertations accepted before, right? I mean, they're going to be considered using the old rules, or that's why, as you can see, Green wants to submit his. Again, Slava knows this better than. But the funny part is that, I mean, again, what you don't really know, that I mean, again, even the PhD defenses in the Soviet times were tough. So you have to wait the quotes when you can submit it, and wait until your queue is up to, right? And because of the quotes, the very last sentence is just very funny. I mean, it's not funny. It's historically, I don't want to say funny. No. It's just ironic. Look at this. Is it true that this Breen over here, he's a mathematician, Breen, whether he, I mean, is it possible that Breen can submit your thesis at your council, right? PhD council in
На самом
Geneva.
деле защищался Песен, а не Брин у нас.
But it says Brin. But bottom line is that for English speaking, right? If you know what the Brin is, it's a father of Sergey Brin, who's a founder of Google.
Yes, yes.
Can you imagine that right nowadays? Right. So it's a 75, right? Again, they had quotes, and then because of the, I mean, I don't want to go into some issues, right? It was tough for certain people to get defended, right, on time.
It was Jewish quotes. I mean, what? I mean, that was like that.
No, I mean, we don't have to. I mean, again,
yeah, we don't have to, but that was what it was.
No, I'm just saying this is just an irony, right? And I knew that Slava knows the answers to that, right? Of course. And basically, this is just it's the last slide of my presentation, I guess, right? And on this note, I would like to end up. And again, thank you, everyone. I mean, I'm not a part of the organizing committee, but I'm glad that the committee let me speak today, right? It just I covered what I believe is kind of important from the in Leonid's scientific legacy, right? But again, it's just a little fraction, just the type of the iceberg that I mentioned. And I keep saying this over and over, that people know the very, very tiny tip of the iceberg, right? What was done in his school in Nizhny Novgorod back then. It's funny that people rediscover these results almost 50, 60 years later, right? How strong the inertia is indeed. All right, but let me end up on a cheerful note that you're welcome to get our very first, okay, I go to the very first slide. So hopefully it will be, it will come out soon, right? And you're welcome to read it, and it's well written, right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Andrei.
Thank you, Andrei. Very interesting.
Very nice talk.
Good. Very nice. I hope that you will send us presentation.
All right. By the way, I heard that you record the conversation. I mean, again, the talks, right? Maybe you should let us know how we can have access to them, because my family wants to see.
Ты когда приедешь, Андрей?
In February. Mm-hmm. We all planning to come, the whole family. So my mom is going to turn 85 in February, so that's the plan.
Okay.
We'll see. I mean, how COVID is going to affect the travel in next year.
Possible to come out and
say it again.
Is it possible now?
I mean, why not? Now you can travel. I mean, now it's easy breezy. Good
to know.
I mean, you cannot come, Misha, unfortunately. Right? Unfortunately, our grandmas cannot come here because they can't get visas anymore. But I mean, buy tickets and travel. I mean, lucky me, I don't have to come back to Russia to get my Russian passport. Otherwise, I would be in trouble. All right, Serежа, where are you? Гоня.
Он сейчас подключится, у него компьютер вырубился. Он мне звонил. Он сначала вырубился, а потом стал обновляться. Он сейчас компьютер Саши Гоня.
Okay, Dima, you're organizer, right? Are you?
Yes, but I mean, we all know that Gonchenko is organizer. I mean,
okay,
so
Tali still
let's not pretend.
I'm just okay. Bernard's still here, so we keep talking English, right? Okay. Jan is here too, right?
You begin New Year celebration or Christmas?
I guess I have heard enough closings of conferences that you can do it in Russian and it will be fine.
Yeah, I just hope that one day, I mean, it's going to be over soon, right? Enough of Russian, I mean, enough of online meetings, right? Enough of online meetings. Well, let's wait on Gonya, right? He very likely he's going to have some concluding remarks. But what I can do, I can convert this presentation in the PDF and share. Okay, I'll send it to Gonya if you want. Because some comments, Slav, about you are also interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, David. I can see some of my students here. Dima.
Serежа went for vodka.
No, he's just offline. Dima.
Yes.
Given that your mega, right? Yeah, Bernard likes this mega. Given that your mega was renewed, are we going to have a meeting in the summer?
What do you mean?
Shilnikov conference, summer conference.
We'll have a.
Or they're unrelated?
We'll have a big dynamical system meeting.
Oh yeah, right. You absolutely.
Where you are one of the presenters.
Oh yeah, I forgot about
So just...
that. You're right.
So it's not about money. It's about epidemic, of course, obviously.
Yeah, but unless you saw that, right? Maybe I shouldn't say that, but you saw that letter that some of the Russian mathematicians signed up to petition to delay the Congress in St. Petersburg, right? Because of one of the kids was imprisoned.
Yes, but yeah, I know, but it's an old story, and it looks like it's, well, we'll see. Okay.
And what about you, Andrei? Did you register
What?
this Congress in Petersburg?
Conference? What conference? Or the petition?
No, Congress in St. Petersburg.
Куда пропал? Ты закрывать будешь?
No, Misha. I kind of like soccer World Cup more than that.
Тогда уж Диме поручи. Диме поручи.
Я думаю, Дима может закрыть. Что ему?
Лерман может.
All right, unless
что
you have
нужно
something.
закрыть? Что я должен закрыть?
Okay, unless you guys have something to say.
Пожелание.
Again.
Dear colleagues, our chairman is out.
He went offline.
Because his computer is out.
Так, кто у нас? Лерман старейшина.
So I propose to close our meeting. To my mind, the meeting was very interesting and the program was fantastic. And I am very glad that we can come together and listen each other and to know about new results. I hope we are lucky to be here. And again, we try to be here in next year. As Jules said, next year in Nizhny Novgorod. Thank you. Thank you for all speakers for very interesting talks.
Thank you very much, and until next time, thanks for all the work you put in this. Okay.
It was nice to see you, Bernard, after so many years, by the way.
What?
I said it was nice to see you after so many years.
Yes, from a distance. Huh?
Well,
you are free to say something.
Come on, no. I'm too
no
old. No
drinking here, right?
I'm too old for that.
It's too early.
So next time,
Next.
take good care, and thank you very much.
begin closing banquet.
Таня, а у нас есть... А давайте выключим запись.